The Dallas Cowboys are primed for a giant upset when they take on the New York Giants. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready. Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the new Locked On NFL, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am the host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today, as I am every Thursday, by Locked On NFL expert, the data queen, Michelle Majuk. On today's show, we're going to play a little pretender, contender. Who do you trust more between the Bills and the Chiefs? Also, I think the Vikings are true contenders this year, but we'll start with the Thursday night football matchup between the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Giants. And I think that we're going to see a giant upset on Thursday night. Before we get into it, do want to let you know that we appreciate you making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Make sure that you tune into the afternoon version of Locked On NFL and step into the barbershop with Tony Wiggins. And do also want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure that you check out your team's crossover episode. But go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Michelle, I let it out there early. I think that the Giants can upset the Dallas Cowboys on Thursday night football. And a big reason why is because I think the Giants can physically bully the Cowboys. And our girl, Patricia Traina from Locked On Giants, talked about exactly why that might happen.
Running back Devin Singletary has rushed for 10 or more yards on 14.3% of 42 carries this season, which is tied for the 8th best of qualified running backs. Why is that good, you ask? Well, the Dallas Cowboys, ladies and gentlemen, have the worst run defense in the NFL. All right. The Cowboys have allowed 10 plus yards on 17.3% of their carries against them this season, which is tied for third worst in the NFL. And what's interesting is Dallas runs a stacked box on 76.2% of their run defense plays, which is 17th in the league. And that they have allowed 4 rushing touchdowns in 3 games, which is the second most behind Tampa Bay.
So I think a big reason for that is the Dallas Cowboys like to play in nickel. They're one of the teams that play in nickel the most in the NFL. And look, the Giants don't have a fantastic run game. They're only 19th in the NFL, 105 yards a game. But like Patricia mentioned, Dallas is the worst team in the NFL in run defense, 185 yards allowed per game. Absolutely ridiculous there. At the end of the day, I think the Dallas Cowboys have gotten away from the Dallas Cowboy identity. You look back at Dallas Cowboys teams that have been successful in the past, not even the championship teams only in the 90s, but like the recent teams that have been successful with Dak Prescott. They were able to physically outman everybody on the front line with their offensive line, with their run game, and they simply can't do that right now. So I am calling the upset here. The New York Giants beat the Cowboys.
Tyler, I want to agree with you so bad, right? Because that would be the fun way to go. And yeah,
Right.
watching Thursday night football, you want to see these upsets, but I just can't get on board with that. Like Dak Prescott has absolutely owned the Giants. He's won each of his last 12 starts against the Giants, and it hasn't even been close. Like the last 2 years, he absolutely destroyed them, right? Like they won 40-0 in their first matchup, 49-17. I totally get the run game thing, right? Like they stink at stopping the run. I do think Devin Singletary is a good running back for the Giants, and they'll be able to run. I don't trust Daniel Jones. I don't trust Daniel Jones not to make mistakes and turn over the ball when he does have to throw. And I do think that Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson, they're going to be able to get it done through the air. They're not going to have to lean on the run game. So I'm not worried about that. Like, I think they can take a huge lead, and then it kind of just eliminates the worries about their run defense if they have a huge lead.
Yeah, I mean, if they can make the Giants pass the ball and force them to be one-handed, that's obviously going to help. But on the other side of things, I will admit, I am a bit worried about the Cowboys passing game and attacking the Giants defense. There are some Giants cornerbacks that are going to be out in this game, Adoree Jackson to name one there. So when you're missing 2 cornerbacks, that's a cluster injury situation, and that can definitely help you, or hurt you. But looking at the Cowboys thing again, outside of just the idea that they don't have the beef on the front line and they like to play a nickel, another concern for them is their tackling. And our guys at Locked On Cowboys talked about that as well.
And then the other big thing for me was missed tackles, man. Just brutal. Almost all of the big plays created in this game were due to a missed tackle at some point that should have been an easy tackle by someone.
Yep.
Even with, come on, the Derrick Henry guy, I get it. It's Derrick Henry. You're a professional football player. If you meet him in the hole, you need to tackle him, man. So I think that was the 2 main glaring things of the defense, but there certainly is a lot more to discuss. Yeah.
There is a lot more to discuss here. And I think one of the big things, we're talking about the Cowboys not being physical, and that's primarily on defense and stopping the run. But on the offensive side of the ball, the Cowboys are 30th in the NFL, only running the ball 73 yards per game. And then you flip that around when you talk about pass blocking, the Giants are a great pass rush. They're second in the NFL with 14 sacks. Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau. I mean, they have some horses there on the front line. And Shane Bowen is a guy who I've covered a lot in my career, and he can run those twists and stunts up front and really get guys going in the pass rush. So one of the reasons I am taking the Giants, despite some of the things that you have mentioned, is I think the pass rush advantage for the Giants, and then the ability to run the football and get Daniel Jones in advantageous situations. I think the Giants, who are underdogs in this game, I think they pull off the upset. Again, I'm going with it. But then again, there's a reason you're 3-0 in the predictions and I'm 1-2, maybe.
I don't hate the line, right? The Giants are sitting there at +5.5. I can see this being a closer game than usual for the Giants versus the Cowboys. Normally it's a blowout, but the Cowboys have been struggling this year, as you just brought up, for many, many reasons, right? And this is their own fault that they don't have a run game. I mean, they went into the season with Rico Dowdle and Ezekiel Elliott. And so I don't feel bad that you can't run the ball. Like, you did this to yourself. It's like they didn't get Jonathan Brooks in the draft and they just fell apart and just couldn't figure it out the rest of the offseason. But the Cowboys have trailed for 1 hour and 52 minutes of time this season through 3 games. They only trailed for 4 hours and 37 minutes for the entire 2023 season. So they're more than halfway there already. Yeah. So this team is very, very different than what they were last year. The defense is not nearly as good. So, and like Daniel Jones is kind of doing his thing with Malik Neighbor. So I don't think your stance that, they can beat this Cowboys team when the Giants are playing at home, like, it's not a crazy take at all.
Right. I mean, Malik Neighbors versus Trevon Diggs, there's some beef there as well, so that'll be interesting to watch. But I think one thing is, if the Cowboys, like you said, do get off to a fast start, I think that's going to eliminate some of the concerns that we've talked about and set them up for a big win. But I think this game is much more exciting than maybe some people think on paper, and I'm very excited to watch it. But I'm excited to watch all these games because we're seeing some teams with some undefeated records, and it's kind of interesting whether or not we believe in these teams. We're going to do a little contender, pretender. Before we do want to thank you again for making Locked On NFL your first listen. Make sure that you tune in for the second edition of Locked On NFL and step into the barbershop with Tony Wiggins this afternoon. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, Game Time is the best place to buy tickets, period. They have the best features in the industry, and now they just got another fantastic feature. It's called Game Time Picks, and it makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Speaking of those features, if you toggle on the feature in the app, you can get all-in pricing, so you actually know what you're going to pay for your tickets when you look at them. Also, speaking of looking, you get a view from your seat, panoramic view, so you actually know what you're going to be looking at when you sit down. And of course, you get the Game Time guarantee, so you know you're getting the best price. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, Michelle, let's continue today's edition of Locked on NFL. Talked about that Thursday night football matchup, but now we're going to play a little game that everyone loves to play called Contender and Pretender. So we got 5 teams to look at, 5 undefeated teams in the NFL, and I'm going to start in the NFC with the Minnesota Vikings. And if the question is contender or pretender, my guy Luke Braun, the brain from Locked on Vikings, has his answer.
Cam Bynum's movie director asks, are we sure the Vikings are not Super Bowl contenders? I think you kind of have to say they are now. They're 3-0, and strength of schedule has not been kind. And like, okay, so I looked around a little bit at like what national media was saying, listening to shows like Heed the Call and listening to other like national outlets and kind of what they're saying. And people are calling the Vikings like the story of the season is the Minnesota Vikings and Sam Darnold. I think you could, like, if you wanted to hate, you could easily write off the Giants game. And if you really wanted to, you could write off the 49ers game as like a fluke. Oh, they were missing McCaffrey. Like, you could make those excuses. But like at a certain point, they demand your respect. And I think beating the Texans by 27 points demands your respect as a contender. I think we're there. And like, I think you're being unreasonable if you're not there with them.
Now, that is a strong statement from Luke that it's unreasonable to think that the Vikings aren't contenders. But Michelle, I'm a believer. Can't sing on YouTube. You get the copyright strike. But I am. After seeing what they did to the Texans and dismantling them that way, I'm a believer. Look, at the end of the day, Sam Darnold is somebody who I don't know if I believe in Sam Darnold. I don't know if he can keep this up. And honestly, you look at it, like, he's been good, but it's not like he's, prime Pat Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers out there, and statistically speaking. But look at everything outside of Sam Darnold. Darnold is a story, but look outside. Brian Flores is a head football coach in the NFL. And what he's doing with his zone concepts, the way he's dropping and disguising coverages right now, it's absurd stuff that I've never seen before. It's dropping into cover 2 with the safety on the line of scrimmage. Crazy. But then you look, the offensive line, while the pass blocking metrics aren't great, they have a better offensive line than most teams in the NFL. You get Justin Jefferson. They're going to get Jordan Addison back from injury. They're going to get TJ Hawkinson back from injury. You have Aaron Jones in the backfield. Like, Sam Darnold has been solid, but the rest of the team, and obviously Kevin O'Connell, a fantastic play caller. So to me, I believe in all the other stuff with the Vikings. And I think with the quarterback play being what it is right now, Darnold is good enough to get them to a contending position in the playoffs.
Absolutely. You brought that up perfectly. Their defense is so stinking good. Like, so good. It's unbelievable because, going into the season on paper, you were like, I don't think they have the secondary in order to be this great. But they have been so good. And like, it is important to bring up their schedule because week 1, they face the Giants. You can throw that game out. But the 49ers and the Texans are 2 of the top offenses, at least going into the season. That's what we expected them to be. And I still think they will be this year. Right. So for them to just win those games, really slow down those offenses. I mean, basically shut down the Texans completely. Like, that's impressive. And with Sam Darnold, he's good enough, right? And this Kevin O'Connell offense, Kevin O'Connell's so good. And you brought up, they don't even have Jordan Addison yet, or TJ Hawkinson, who is so important to this offense. So when they get him back, I did look at the PFF stats, and Sam Darnold's still one of the most inaccurate quarterbacks in the league. He has, I think the second highest inaccurate but catchable percentages on his pass attempts this year. But the thing is, when you're throwing to Justin Jefferson, it doesn't matter. Get it near him, he's going to catch it. So Sam Darnold's in a great situation. They are contenders for sure. I don't think Super Bowl contenders because you have Sam Darnold back there, but they are contenders to, win a wild card game, maybe even a divisional round.
Well, to me in the NFC, I'm not such a big believer in Brock Purdy, or such a big believer in what the Eagles got going on, or such a big believer in Jared Goff. Like, to me, if there was another superstar elite level quarterback in the NFC that I was worried about, then I would agree with you. But I think that in the NFC, Sam Darnold is good enough to take them to the Super Bowl. But what I will say is they play their arch nemesis, the Green Bay Packers, this weekend, and I am excited to see if they can, get that monkey off their back early in the year. Now, flipping over, do want to talk about another team, the Seattle Seahawks. And Whereas I do believe that the Vikings can be contenders in the playoffs. I do not believe in the Seattle Seahawks. Now, this may be reductive to a point to just look at their opponents, but they played the Denver Broncos at home week 1. They play on the road, but play the New England Patriots, which people thought the Pats may be better than expected from their Cincinnati Bengals week 1 win. But looking at the Bengals now and then looking at the Pats against the Jets in week 2, maybe that's not quite what we thought. You know what I mean? So playing Denver and then the Patriots and then whatever this version of the Dolphins is that we are seeing right now without Tua, like I feel like the Seahawks are improved. They're better. They're going to be a playoff team, but I absolutely am not buying into the Seahawks as Super Bowl contenders. They are pretenders, in my opinion.
I think they're strong pretenders as well. I mean,
strong pretenders is the perfect way to put it. They're strong pretenders.
Strong pretenders. This is the issue, right? Their defense looks so incredibly good. They're, all the metrics are saying that they're elite defense, and you want to believe it, right? Because Mike McDonald's coming over from the defense of the Ravens, and the Ravens were so good on defense last year, and you are seeing that impact on the Ravens defense, right? Yes. They're not as good without him. So you want to believe he brought this over to Seattle, but it's so hard to tell right now because you just brought up those matchups. That means they face Bo Nix, Jacoby Brissett, and Skylar Thompson / Tim Boyle. Like, we don't know anything about this defense yet. Now they have to face the Lions this week. That's a harder offense, even though they've been starting slow. They get the 49ers a couple weeks, the Falcons, the Bills, the Rams, the 49ers, the Cardinals, the Jets. Like, their schedule's about to get way harder. I won't even be surprised if they end up missing the playoffs, let alone not contending in the playoffs.
I mean, that is a little spicy, I must say. I think 3-0 really gives you an advantage there. But yeah, I see what you mean. To me, I don't believe in the offensive line. To me, I don't believe in the run game, especially with Kenny Walker banged up. I know Zach Charbonnet had a good game. I understand that. But again, it's all colored by the schedule that they've played. So we got more contender pretender ahead. There are 3 other undefeated teams in the NFL: the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Buffalo Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs. Who do you trust more, Buffalo or Kansas City? And can Justin Fields keep this going? A lot to discuss on today's Locked On NFL. Another reminder, make sure that you check out Tony Wiggins in the barbershop for the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Hey, NFL fans. Yes, I'm talking to you. You're an NFL fan. Yep, that's you. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same exact page where you place your bets. It is an all-encompassing hub for game information. You can get started on FanDuel right now as well with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Let me run that by you one more time, just in case you missed it. That's $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And hey, listen, I'm not telling you have to, but the Giants plus 5.5, that Thursday night game, I'm just saying, folks, I'm just saying. So make sure you take advantage and head to America's #1 sportsbook. It's FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com. All right, we're going to cap off today's Thursday night football preview edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. We talked about that Thursday night football matchup. Football is back, folks. We made it through the couple of days of the week with no football, but we are back. But we've transitioned the conversation to a little contender pretender called the Vikings contenders, or at least I did. Michelle, I'm not so certain. We both agreed the Seahawks are pretenders based on the schedule that they played. But now we got to talk about the AFC teams that are undefeated, and we'll start with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And obviously a lot of the conversation is about Justin Fields and whether he can continue doing this. And we are going to hear from my guy Chris Carter at Locked On Steelers about what Mike Tomlin is saying about the quarterback competition.
The bottom line here is the reason Mike Tomlin won't let anyone pin him down is because he realized, why would I let anyone pin me down into a decision right now? And we all know, it's no secret, it would be more beneficial to the Steelers if Justin Fields turned out to be the guy. Because if he's the guy, he's 25 years old, you lock him into a future contract, you may have your franchise quarterback for the next 10 years. And now that question's out the door. You don't got to worry about it. If Russell Wilson's the guy, that could work out for this year, maybe next year. But you'll have to quickly be searching for your next quarterback again. So obviously the Steelers, like ideally, Justin Fields would work out. But when you're in this position, if you're Mike Tomlin, you just saw Kenny Pickett's situation blow up last year when Mason Rudolph was the starter, and then Kenny Pickett wasn't sure about things, and then Kenny Pickett didn't want to be in Pittsburgh when Russell Wilson was signed. They want to avoid all that. You're like, you know what? We're not talking about that. And that's why he's clearing the air, not talking hypotheticals. Right now, Justin Fields is setting to start this week. If Russell Wilson's healthy, we'll reapproach it here.
I mean, that's the right call from Mike Tomlin. Why box yourself in and, basically lay your own trap in the woods? Like, you're not going to lay a bear trap in the path that you walk when you go out to hunt. That's a little bit of a loose metaphor, but I like it, so I'm rolling with it. But at the end of the day, the quarterback situation is why I think the Steelers are pretenders. I think the Steelers are a playoff team. I said that before, my playoff predictions. I think the Steelers make the playoffs. But I don't think that they are true Super Bowl contenders here because I don't trust that quarterback situation. So the defense is strong. They lean on the run game, but I just don't trust the quarterback. I don't trust the playmakers in Pittsburgh either. So Mike Tomlin can ham and egg this thing to a playoff appearance. But we know once they get there, they're not a team that you would trust to make a run.
So I'm a Steelers fan. I'll say that. Just going to put it out there. So I might be biased, but I feel like I'm a very, very fair Steelers fan. So in previous years, I would have said, yeah, if they'd claw their way into a playoff, we're just going to get killed in the wild card round. That's what I was saying last year. They're always going to get killed. Watching them this year, I have so much more confidence. Obviously, the defense is amazing, right? They rank first in scoring total, third down defense, red zone defense. They've been playing lights out. But honestly, I know they haven't been putting up a lot of touchdowns or points on offense, but it's a completely different experience for me watching these games. Everything seems easier. They're actually throwing over the middle of the field. There have been some big plays called back by ticky-tack fouls. I really do think they haven't even come close to hitting their full potential. They haven't even let Justin Fields loose yet, right? He hasn't been using his legs as much as he could be. And I do think they're at this cusp of truly breaking out on offense. So if they can do that, and I think they will, I do think they could be contenders for the Super Bowl. Maybe not, but for an AFC Championship appearance, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not as down on them as I have been for the last 3-4 years.
Well, I guess I wouldn't be shocked if they won a playoff game. I guess I can say that. Maybe saying that they're automatic loss in the playoffs, that's a step too far. But I just can't. I can't get there to say that they would even make the AFC Championship game. But that's why they play the games. Now, speaking of AFC Championship games, the two teams that are favorites to make it to that game right now are the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills, who both sit at undefeated. I think that the reason we put these two teams at the end is because I think both of us would say that they are contenders, and I don't think you can really say much else. But the real question here is, Michelle, with the Chiefs maybe not looking their best, who do you trust more right now, with Buffalo looking like the best team in the league? And I know you've seen some stats that make you maybe a little worried about the Chiefs.
I mean, Josh Allen is playing lights out. I mean, I know the whole Bills team is. Their defense is playing lights out too, but Josh Allen is just killing it. He's limited the turnovers. With Joe Brady, it seems like without Stephon Diggs and trying to get him his targets, he's not throwing interceptions anymore. And it's wild to see how much he's dominating the league without having a go-to guy. He's just spreading the ball around. And imagine when Keon Coleman gets more work under his belt, or they finally Dalton Kincaid can break out, or Khalil Shakir gets more time too. At the end of the year, they could even be better with these guys getting more experience. So I love the Bills this year. It's hard not to say they should be strong contenders for finally to make the Super Bowl, right? Hopefully that happens for Josh Allen. The thing is, you can't be worried about the Chiefs, right? Because they stunk last year in the regular season. They crawled their way to the playoffs because they're in a terrible division. And then, they pick it up for the playoffs. but I think their defense isn't as strong as it was last year. And that was a big part of them, making it to the Super Bowl last year. Mahomes is really struggling this season. 73% of his yards have been from yards after the catch. That's the second most behind Tua. And he's only thrown for 659 yards. That's the worst through 3 games of a season in his career. He is averaging 4.6 air yards per attempt, by far the lowest among all qualified quarterbacks. He has a 30 passer rating when under pressure. Only Bo Nix and Bryce Young have worse passer ratings when pressured. He has the worst completion percentage under pressure, so even worse than Bo Nix and Bryce Young. And he's doing all this. He has all of these bad numbers while he's targeting an open receiver 56% of the time. That's the 3rd highest rate in the league. So it's not the system. It's not your guys not getting open. It's just there's something there that Mahomes has been struggling the last 2 regular seasons. And I'm sure I'll look stupid in the playoffs and they'll come back to life and it'll be fine. I know it's the Chiefs, but I think they're falling apart a little bit right here. Well, I know they're 3-0, so not falling apart too hard.
Right.
They are 3-0, and they get the Chargers without Justin Herbert this week. So they'll be 4-0. It's just, I don't think they're the same Chiefs as normal.
Yeah. And that's fair to look at. And what I would say is they've added wide receivers. Last year, everybody's like, how can they win without these wide receivers? And they add Hollywood Brown, who hasn't played yet and may not play at all this year with the injury, but Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice is back. But Patrick Mahomes' average depth of target is 5.8. It's like the lowest in the entire NFL to go along with some of the stats that you're mentioning. So it's not like the offense is vastly improved now with the added weapons. One thing I will say for the Buffalo Bills is they have a really good offensive line this year, maybe the best offensive line they've had with Josh Allen. Their defensive line looks absolutely fantastic. And when you look around the NFL, the quality of offensive line play is so low that if you have a really good defensive line that can take advantage of bad offensive lines, and you yourself have a good offensive line, which most teams do not, that is a critical advantage in the new version of the NFL we're seeing this year, where the run game is more important, stopping the run is more important than it's been. I saw some data in previous years correlating basically pass defense EPA and pass offense EPA, and that correlates directly with the best teams in the NFL, like top DVOA teams and stuff like that. Well, I wonder if maybe we need to throw that out and start looking at it in a new cycle with the 2 high safety shells. Mel Kiper hates to hear it, but I think that we're seeing the NFL has always been cyclical, and we're seeing either season 1 or season 2 of the cycle going the other way. And the Buffalo Bills may be ideally suited to take advantage, but I have to steal a line from my guy, Alex Clancy. It's Patrick Mahomes until it isn't. And there's no way that I'm betting on Buffalo over Kansas City. So I'll go with Kansas City as the team I trust.
Patrick Mahomes and the refs. Am I right?
Yeah. Where's the bailout button? Everybody says it's like the beat-ups commercial where they hit the overtime button. The NFL has the bailout the Chiefs button. That they could be
1-2 right now, but they got two. They got 2 friendly calls at the end of the game. I don't want to. I mean, Patrick Mahomes. That's when he shines, right? At the end of games, it's always he's going to come through. I'm not trying to hate on him with these stats. It's just like we're not seeing the old Patrick Mahomes. And I feel like we have it in the regular season for a while now. Now, when they need him in the 4th quarter, he comes through, and that's huge, and he does make big plays. And obviously, he's the best quarterback in the league. But I just feel like Josh Allen and that team right now, that Bills team, it's just so dominant. Now, there's been a lot of times they started strong and then kind of fell off. So hopefully they can keep it up.
Well, it'll be interesting to watch. The football weekend is back, folks. We made it once again, but that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I'll be back on Friday with Ross Jackson, the mastermind, to look at the rest of the NFL slate. But for me, the madman Tyler Rowland, and my co-host, Michelle Majuk, that is going to do it for us today. As I tell you every single show, stay safe out there.
Bye, y'all.